Thanks for tuning in, guys. The Pest and Lawn Ginja, and today we're going to talk about how to prevent trees from producing fruit and all this garbage that lands on the ground. Do you have trees that are dropping so many seeds and so much fruit that it's just out of hand? Well, I do. I've got a couple of maple trees that drop so many seeds I can't take it anymore. It stains my driveway, drives me nuts. I've got a few of my neighbors that actually have non-fruit bearing plums and non-fruit bearing cherry trees that are always dropping fruit on the ground, especially during the summer, and staining the concrete. The goo gets on their feet, you end up tracking it through the whole house. So what do we do? Now, I've heard rumors of these magical sprays that take away the fruit or the seeds of the tree. They're called seed inhibitors, but I wasn't too sure how they worked and what kind of success rate and what my expectations were. So I went out and bought some, and I sprayed the trees according to the label. Now I'm excited to get this experiment started. According to the label, this will treat apple, crabapple, carob, elm, flowering pear, flowering plums, oak, olive, sour orange, sweet gum, sycamores, and quote-unquote others. Now you notice my maple trees aren't on this list, so it's going to be interesting to see how this goes. Now it's important that you have this product on hand. Number one, if you're already seeing seeds, you're already seeing fruit on the tree, it's too late. This product has to be put down during the blooming process. Now you want to make sure that the product goes down during mid-bloom to late bloom. Now depending on the tree, you've got about a 3 to 5 day window to get the product applied properly to the blooms. Now, if you're not 100% sure what a bloom is, it looks like a little tiny flower or bud that ranges across the entire tree. Now, it's these blooms that turn into fruit. Now, some trees are cross-pollinators only, and others can pollinate by themselves. I purchased Florel brand growth regulator. Number one, it was very reputable. Number two, I could find it easily online or at my local farmer supply store. Now you want to make sure that you have this on hand, and I've got links in the description of the video so you can order it. Now the other thing that you're going to need to have is a sprayer that's capable of getting into the trees. Now I have the FlowZone Typhoon 2V. Now it puts out a whopping 1.1 to 1.3 gallons per minute. Yes, gallons per minute. Now, the reason why that's so valuable is because that will help me shoot up into the tree, and I find this goes about 22 feet tall. So for the average homeowner, this works very well, and I just use the cone tip to make sure I can get into the tree with enough spray. Now, it's important to remember that anytime you choose to use any spray, you want to be familiar with the label, particularly the personal protective equipment and the safety recommendations. So the number one thing that we want to be careful of is that we're wearing the proper protective equipment. Long sleeve pants, closed toe shoes, chemical resistant gloves, and goggles preferred. Now the other issue is you do not want this product to drift. Do not spray this on windy days, because if you get it in somebody else's garden, they're not going to have anything to harvest at the end of the season, and they're going to be really upset when they find out it was because of you. Now the mixing and the amount you use per tree will vary depending on how big the trees are. Now as a general rule of thumb, you're going to mix 3 fluid ounces per gallon, but you need to check the label first. Now, for instance, I was using on average 1 gallon for each one of my trees and each one of my neighbor's trees. Now, per gallon, I'm using 3 fluid ounces. The label is quite interesting because you're supposed to thoroughly wet the blooms to make sure that it eliminates the fruit production. However, it is possible that if you overspray it, you can cause some leaf stress and the leaves will kind of defoliate or come off of the tree. That is the common issue. However, the plant commonly will reproduce more leaves, and it's not as big of a problem as it sounds. The big issue with the label is it stipulates to not treat trees that are already in stress, because this product produces a hormone that causes a slight amount of stress to drop the blooms. Now, as a result, if the tree is already in stress, it will just make it stay in its funk for longer, and we don't want that to happen. Now I chose to do a second application about 6 days later just to make sure that I got good enough coverage. The 32-ounce bottle of the Florel brand growth regulator did about 10 gallons of mixed solution. Now with those 10 gallons, I ended up spraying 5 trees. I ended up spraying my 2 maples and my redbud twice, and also the 2 plum trees across the street twice. About 5 to 7 days after my second spray, I started seeing all these blooms just massively falling off the tree, which got me a little excited because then I felt like it was actually working. Now, fast forwarding to 4 weeks after the initial treatment, I started seeing a lot of small, tiny seeds just dropping from the tree, and they were dropping fast. I was kind of shocked at how much was actually coming down, but I looked at my neighbor's trees and none of his seeds were actually dropping. Now, fast forwarding 6 weeks from the initial time that we sprayed the trees, and yes, I've still got seed pods that are in the tree, but I don't have quite nearly as many as I did last year. I'd say somewhere between 50 and 60% less. Now, let's jump over to my neighbor's trees so you can kind of see a comparison between the two, and I think you'll find it a little bit shocking. Now, the sheer amount of seeds that are in this tree is staggering. And this is normally what my tree looks like too. The seed pods are just ginormous and everything is extremely mature by comparison to my tree. Now I'm gonna pluck a random stalk of seeds off of my tree where it's pretty dense, and then we're gonna compare it to my neighbor's trees. Now you're gonna find that his tree pods and the seeds are actually somewhere between 50% larger, let's just say, give or take. And it just goes to show that these growth regulators are doing their job. I'm really, really shocked. Here's the plum tree that we treated about 6 weeks ago. Kind of want to check the results real quick, but it's kind of hard to see from the ground. So let me see what I can do to get a better bird's eye view here. Here we go. Now up in the tree, we actually don't have a lot, but we definitely have some fruit. I think it might surprise you, but these inhibitors do a fantastic job. Now I know it's hard to tell from the video, but one branch or each little twig had none or one tiny little plum on it, and that was about it. Normally we'd see about 5 or 6 bundled and grouped together. So it does help that about 3 nights ago we got a little bit of a microburst that came through, and we got, what was it, 60 mile an hour winds? It was insane. So it has knocked a lot of these off prematurely. However, I think we're all happy that they're coming off of the tree fairly easy. Normally at this time of the year, we have hundreds of these, not only in the tree, but starting on the ground, and they get to be difficult to pick up. I mean, the mower's not gonna pick this up. Like if you were to equivalent it to a 5-gallon bucket, like how much would you have been picking up versus now?
Maybe a quarter. I mean, we could pick up probably half, and it's probably a quarter right now. It's way, way different.
Okay.
3/4.
So about 75%.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's pretty obvious that the seed inhibitor is working, and working really well, but I wanted to give you guys an idea of how well it's working. So I'm gonna jump over to one of the neighbors' houses that also has a couple of plum trees in their backyard so you can get a better idea. Would you look at these beauties? Man, it got so windy the other night. Let's go take a look. Now at first glance you can see a lot of seeds on the ground. Now, I'm not too concerned about this. The majority of them are probably gonna be in the tree, and that's what I really wanna pay attention to. So I wanna show you the obvious difference. Right off the bat, everything is still on the tree. There are just so many everywhere. Now, I didn't have a lot of expectations going into this little trial here. I didn't know how it was gonna work, but considering we're getting 70% less yield from this plum tree, I'm pretty impressed. And after we went over to the neighbors and realized that they have 10 times the amount of little plums than the trees that we treated, it's pretty impressive, I'm not gonna lie. Now earlier, before I talked a little bit about cross-pollination, and that was the reason why I sprayed both the plum trees on the same side of the road, was to see how well we could get the seed inhibitor to work. Now my neighbor's maple tree is the same species as mine. It's a little bit older, but it has about 70% more seeds than my tree. Now I obviously didn't spray his tree, and I probably could have gotten slightly better results on my tree had I sprayed his tree as well. But just goes to show it's working, and it works really well. Now there was a couple of lessons that I learned spraying these trees. Number one, you're not getting rid of 100% of the fruit. That's not the way that it was made, and it's not the way that it's gonna happen. Now these species of trees are actually classified as fruitless, and I was kind of shocked that it still ended up doing about 30% yield, but that 30% is much better than 100%, and it avoids some of the problems. Now the other thing that I wasn't expecting is, even after the seeds germinated and we started getting budding and the fruit came out, the fruit dropped fast. Like, it's not sticking to the tree. And the seeds that I ended up with on my maple tree, they're about 60% smaller in size by the time they're dropping than my neighbor's tree that I didn't end up spraying. So the seeds are dropping sooner, but they're also not maturing quite the same rate as the tree that I didn't spray. Now the other thing I didn't take into effect is the blooms were literally falling off by day 5, and they were really coming off the tree. Now the other lesson I learned is you definitely want to spray these trees multiple times. You don't want to do it just one time, and you have to do it at the correct time within about 3 days of the blooming period. Because if you miss that opportunity, you're not going to have the efficacy that you were hoping for. Now, if you guys have any questions or concerns, please hit me up in the comments. You know I'd love to help you guys out. Just remember, sharing is caring. The Ginja's onward and upward to 100,000 subscribers. Till next time, guys, we'll see ya.
With hot chocolate and toasted cheese sandwiches. Grover would offer this Seder friend.
Ah!
Hate you!
That was a pretty good one.
It